I wouldn't wear that rag even to clean my shoes. The hall burst into cruel laughter. Champagne glasses clinked, music faltered, and every eye at my sister's wedding turned toward me. My suit was plain, borrowed, a little loose at the shoulders. But I stood frozen, my face burning. At the center of it all sat Victor Hale, the millionaire. Gold cufflinks caught the light as he leaned back in his chair, smirking. He loved an audience, and tonight he had one. Really, he drawled. Did they drag you in from the kitchen? Or is this your idea of dressing up? More laughter. Even a few relatives I trusted chuckled nervously, not wanting to anger him. Victor knew exactly how to sting. He always did. His wealth wasn't just money. It was a weapon. I lowered my gaze, forcing a small, polite smile. I'm only here for my sister. That's all that matters tonight. My voice was calm even, but that only fed his arrogance. Victor's eyes narrowed. He wasn't satisfied. He wanted spectacle. He tapped his glass with a silver spoon, calling for silence. The music cut off. The room held its breath. Well then, he said loudly, if family means so much, why don't you prove it? Right here, right now, in front of everyone. Whispers rippled through the crowd. I tried to step back, but the circle of eyes closed in tighter, the air heavy with expectation. Victor stood, raising his voice. What's the matter? Too scared to accept a challenge? Or are you just hiding behind your sister's dress train? Gasps. Laughter. The crowd leaned forward, eager for blood. I clenched my fists at my side, heart pounding. I had come here to disappear quietly into the background. But Victor wasn't going to let me. And now, cornered, humiliated under the chandeliers, I realized I had no way out. Come on, let's see it. Voices rose from every table, egging him on, chanting my name like it was a joke. The air was thick with laughter and clinking glasses, but underneath it was sharp, like knives aimed at me. Victor Hale spread his arms wide, soaking in the noise. You all heard him. Our shy little guest says he's here for family. Well, family deserves a show. His grin was wolfish, his words dripping with mockery. Show, show, show. The chant grew louder, fueled by wine and cruelty. I stayed still, jaw tight. My first instinct was to walk away, to let their voices fade behind me, and keep my dignity. For a moment, I turned slightly, as if I might leave. Victor's voice cut through the noise. I'll make it interesting. $10,000 if you last 5 minutes against me. But I doubt you'll last 30 seconds. The crowd roared, some pounding the tables, some laughing until tears ran down their cheeks. Money always made the game crueler. I drew a slow breath, forcing myself calm. If I rose to his bait too quickly, I'd play the fool he wanted. So I met his eyes, steady, unblinking. Victor leaned closer, voice sharp enough for only the front tables to hear. You walk away now and you're nothing. A ghost at your own sister's wedding. Something in me shifted. My fists loosened. The noise of the room faded until I heard only the beating of my own heart. I lifted my chin. Just one look. Cold. Unshaken. The laughter faltered for a breath. Then, with a voice barely louder than a whisper, I said, Fine, I accept. The room froze. The air sucked out in silence. Even Victor blinked, caught off guard. Why had I agreed? Why now? The crowd didn't know. They couldn't know. But deep inside me, a storm long buried had begun to rise. The memory hit like a knife the moment I said yes. Years ago, I stood in a boardroom, not as a guest, but as a dreamer. I had poured every drop of savings, every sleepless night into a project I believed could change lives. I was young, naive, hungry for a chance. Victor Hale was there too. He smiled, shook my hand, called me partner. I believed him. That was my mistake. Days later, he stole it all. My idea, my work, my future. He filed the patents under his name, sold the company, and left me with nothing but debts I couldn't pay. While he celebrated with champagne, I worked graveyard shifts, eating from paper bags, hiding eviction notices from my family. I still remember one winter night, hands numb from unloading trucks. I whispered to myself in the dark, never again. One day I'll make him see. So I studied every spare hour, every book I could afford, every skill I could sharpen. Not for glory, not for riches, for this, for the moment when silence would no longer be my prison. The wedding hall came back into focus. The laughter, the clinking glasses, Victor's smirk. None of them knew the truth. To them, I was still the forgotten guest in a borrowed suit. But this time, I wasn't the same man he left broken. I looked at him, steady, unblinking, and whispered again, this time for everyone to hear. I accept. The floor cleared, as if the chandelier itself demanded silence. All eyes locked on us. Victor strode forward first, his confidence filling the room. He waved to the guests like a king entering his court. Don't blink, he laughed, or you'll miss how fast I end this. Chairs scraped as people leaned in. The wedding had turned into an arena. I stepped up quietly. No theatrics, no smile. Just calm. My sister's eyes met mine from across the room. Worried, pleading, but I gave her the smallest nod. I needed her to trust me. Victor flourished, showy, reckless, his every move designed to entertain. He wanted the crowd to laugh, to point, to mock, and they did. Every exaggerated gesture brought another round of cheers. I answered with stillness. My moves, sharp, precise, deliberate. To most, it looked weak, almost hesitant. Whispers floated. He's out of his depth. This will be over in seconds. Poor guy doesn't stand a chance. But from the corner of the hall, an older man straightened in his chair. The Admiral. His sharp eyes caught something others missed. A rhythm in my timing. A patience too exact to be clumsy. Victor laughed again, shaking his head. Is that all? Pathetic. The crowd chuckled, sure of his victory. But then, just one subtle move. Quiet, almost invisible. A shift so small, only the Admiral's eyes widened. The first crack appeared, and though the room still laughed, the tide had already begun to turn. Victor slammed his hand down, louder this time, his grin strained. Lucky shot, he sneered, though his eyes darted nervously. The guests laughed on cue, but softer now, uncertain. Whispers slipped through the crowd like smoke. I stayed calm, each move deliberate, as if I'd been here before. My silence was sharper than any insult. Victor grew restless. He leaned forward, talking too much, moving too fast. Every gesture bigger, louder, as if noise could cover the cracks forming in his game. The Admiral's gaze sharpened. He leaned toward the table, lips pressed tight, watching every detail. He saw it, the trap I was weaving. A net invisible to everyone else, tightening with each step. Victor scoffed, his voice rising. You think you're clever? You think this changes anything? His hand trembled slightly as he reached forward. I answered with nothing but precision. A single shift, clean, unstoppable. The crowd hushed. No more laughter, just the weight of realization spreading. Victor's smirk faltered. He blinked, leaned back, then leaned forward again, as if checking the board could rewrite it. The Admiral whispered under his breath, barely audible. Brilliant! Victor's jaw clenched. Sweat gathered at his temple. He reached for another move, but it only made the trap tighter. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply guided him, step by step, into the cage he couldn't see, until it was too late. The silence in the hall was thunderous. And then, the sequence was set. Inescapable. Victor's hand froze above the table. He saw it now. the snare snapping shut. His eyes darted wildly, searching for a way out that didn't exist. I moved once more, clean, precise, final. Gasps erupted. A ripple of shock swept the hall. The board was locked, his position crushed. There was no escape. Victor fumbled, knocking over his glass. Wine spilled across the table, dark and ugly. No, that's not. His voice cracked. The Admiral stood suddenly, his voice booming across the stunned silence. Attention! The entire room stiffened. What you've just witnessed, he declared, is not luck. It's mastery. And this man, his finger pointed straight at me, just dismantled Victor Hale with brilliance none of you saw coming. A murmur of awe swept through the crowd. Faces turned, no longer mocking but stunned, respectful. Victor's lips trembled. His wealth, his arrogance, his stage, gone in an instant. He tried to speak, but the words collapsed into silence. I rose slowly, calm as ever. No victory dance, no boast, just quiet certainty. The hall thundered with shock and whispers. The mighty Victor Hale, humiliated before them all, and I had delivered the blow he would never forget. The hall erupted. Laughter was gone, replaced by gasps, whispers, and then a slow wave of applause. It grew louder, stronger, until the chandeliers shook with thunder. I stood still, letting the storm wash over me. Not pride, not arrogance, just quiet dignity. Victor stumbled back, pale, his once glorious smirk shattered. He opened his mouth, but no words came. For the first time, the millionaire had nothing to say. The Admiral's voice carried above the noise. Remember this night, wealth buys applause, but skill, patience, and honor, those command respect. His words struck like a hammer, each syllable sealing Victor's downfall. The crowd shifted, their eyes no longer on him, but on me. Admiration burned where mockery once lived. Victor's hand shook. He looked at me, pleading, broken. Please, just don't tell them everything. His voice cracked, barely a whisper. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I simply turned, walked past the tables, past the stairs, past the man who had once stolen everything from me. Each step away was heavier than gold, brighter than victory. By the time I reached the doors, I knew the truth. Revenge wasn't in destroying him. It was in showing the world what he could never be. True greatness is not arrogance or wealth. It is dignity, humility, and the strength to rise when the world laughs. And on this night, I had risen,